diving in today into a brand new faculty, a brand new power. It is August 1st, and I, how, time flies when you're having fun, I guess. And this is an amazing year, and I am thrilled that we are now onto a new power, and it is less of the human and more of the divine. That's what our will is about. Our will is our executive faculty. It is our ability to choose and decide, to command and direct and determine. It's the master manager of all of our faculties, our 12 powers. The will is what we use to make things happen. And today we're going to dive into this idea of will and how we activate this faculty, how we use this faculty to direct the rest, so that there is less human and more divine coming out in our lives. And so we're gonna light this silver candle. And again, it's way far away from me, so I'm not gonna catch fire. You can't see that on the screen, but we have this opportunity in this relative world where we can become enchanted by the desires of our ego, and we can then focus our will on superficial things, right? We get to focus our will on materialistic pursuits when we get wooed by these physical desires. Or we can develop our minds, right? We talk about the power of our minds here, and we can develop our minds to be receptive to spiritual motivation and to align our will to overcome our sense consciousness. All right, see, our sense consciousness is limited here in the physical, but our spiritual is the truth. It is expansive. It is larger than, it is the truth. And so our will invites us into this opportunity to overcome the limits of our conscious and our subconscious mind. See, this is what I know. I know this about me and about you and about all of us, that this divine creative energy that has called us into being right now, that it desires our health, our happiness, our joy, our peace, our harmony. It desires our prosperity of every kind. But see, all the good that we can even visualize doesn't even sum up what this creative energy has in mind for us. There is so much more, but we have to overcome the limits of our conscious and subconscious mind. Now, I want to remind you, I can't remember when we talked about this, but in unity metaphysics, we have 4 different levels of consciousness where we can live. Right? And each one expands to be a greater and greater experience of this incredible divine life that we have. And see, the most constricted consciousness that we can be in is victim consciousness. And in victim consciousness, it's where life happens to us, things happen to us. And we take no responsibility for our experience here. Once we learn to take responsibility and we begin to expand our consciousness, we move into victor consciousness, right? But victor consciousness thinks that it's all me, right? It's all me doing the work. Nothing's ever been given to me. I am the master of my domain. But see, that is still even constricted, because when we begin to understand that we are living in concert with this divine creative energy source, we become vessel. We begin to understand that God lives in and as us. But see, sometimes we get lost in that, and we get to thinking of, like, a raisin in a bun, right? Because God's in me. But see, then we expand our consciousness to true consciousness, to the truth of who we are, and we are in vessel consciousness, verity consciousness, verity where there is no other. Because if God is in me, then God is still separate. But in verity consciousness, we understand our oneness. Right? Yes, we understand our oneness, and that is the path of this spiritual tradition, that unity. We are expanding our consciousness to know our oneness. Yes? But we have to move out of that place of victimhood. That most constricted place where even if we've been studying these new thought principles maybe for 40 or 50 years, sometimes subconsciously or even consciously, we might slip into being a victim and saying, look what happened to me. So I found a story that I want to share with you today, and this comes from the Inuit mythology. The Inuit is an indigenous tribe that lives in the Arctic Circle. So the areas of Greenland and northern Canada, Alaska, those areas, but before there was Greenland and Canada and Alaska, these people made their homes in the Arctic Circle. And this is the story of Sedna. And Sedna was a beautiful young woman who lived with her father, and she had wonderful, wonderful fur pelts to wrap herself in, and she had this beautiful home, and they had delicious food, and it was a wonderful life for her. But then came the time, the age when she was to marry. And so she refused all of her suitors because she was willful. Sedna I want life to be just as it is now or better. So she was willful. She decided what life is supposed to look like and refused everything. Now, if you'll remember last week, we talked about this idea of being willful or being willing. And when we step into our willingness, we get to experience freedom. But when we step into our willfulness and decide that we know what is best in it, we know exactly what things are supposed to look like, we become frozen. Do you want to be free, or do you want to be frozen? So Sedna became willful, and she became frozen in this idea. And finally a suitor came to her, and he told her of his incredible home and all of the beautiful surroundings and all of the amazing food that she would get to eat, and she would have the life of luxury. And so she eloped with him. And remember, this is mythology. And so she gets to her new home, and it turns out that he was a seagull disguised as a man. A seagull disguised as a man. And so now she was living in a bird's nest. See, when we get stuck and we decide that we know what's supposed to happen, we can easily get tricked, and we limit our good. See, when we align our faculty of will with our limited consciousness, we get stuck in victimhood. See, she's a victim in this. She has been tricked, and now she is trapped. We get stuck in our victimhood. And then sometimes we get tied up in these traumatic experiences that we have. Have you ever had a traumatic experience you got stuck in? A couple of us. Okay. It's easy to get stuck there and being a victim, right? So we have the opportunity to use our will to choose, to demand, to decide, to direct our attention. Right? What do we know about directing our attention? What do we know about deciding that things can be better? We know that wherever we focus our attention, right, where attention goes, energy flows. I know you've heard that. We need our will working for us. We need our will working for us, not in demanding that things be a certain way, but in directing our other faculties, our other 12 powers. See, when we filter our will through our spiritual understanding, we are in agreement with this creative energy. Right? When we filter our will through our spiritual understanding, we are in agreement with God, good, love, and our will moves us. See, our will moves us. It determines our movement. Our spiritual understanding says move in this direction. Right? See, when we are living at that limited consciousness and we get this will to move and it's not directed by our understanding, sometimes we move in the wrong direction. Have you ever hit send on that email that spiritually maybe you shouldn't have hit send on? It's just me too, right? Okay. See, we get to align our will to know the direction that we go in. In her book, Your God-Given Potential, we've referred to this over this entire series, Winifred provides 7 steps to train our minds to use our faculty of will. And the first one is going to be a huge surprise for you all. Not really, it's willingness. We talked about willingness last week versus willfulness. See, it's our willingness when it comes to developing our will. It is our willingness to give up and release old habits, old ideas, old attitudes that do not serve us. Right? But because if our ideas and our habits and our attitudes were correct, we would already have all that we desire. Not all of you have everything you desire, right? We're moving in that direction, though, because we are learning to be willing to let go of these things that no longer serve us, right? And this also includes a willingness to stop letting other people decide what our lives should look like. Now, I know none of you have had that experience, but I have had that experience where I think, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do to make these other people love me, respect me, like me. That does not work. So we have to be willing to take charge of our own lives. Right? We have to be willing to receive all of the good that this creative energy wants to provide for us. So we step into our willingness. I am willing. Say that right now with me. I am willing. See, our second step is resolution. We have resolution. We train our minds to take control, to make decisions, and to follow through. Right? See, if we are filtering our will through our spiritual understanding and know what direction to take, but we don't follow through and actually move, We have not cultivated our resolution. We have to be willing to ask the question, what is the path of love here? What is the path of love here? Because see, when our resolution reverts to how can I get my way? Yeah, we need to go back to our willingness, because we're not willing to give up stuff. What is the path of love now? And then we move into training, right? The HR person in me loves this idea of training, because see, we train our will, right? Because will is the manager of the rest of our faculties. So we train our will so that our will can train our other faculties. Because see, we want to use these faculties. They live in us, right? But what good is it, what good is it to have, 14 different kinds of spices in your cabinet if all you use is salt? Right? So we have all these faculties that we need to use, and so our will trains them on how to show up so that we can use our faith and our strength and our wisdom together, so that we can filter our love through our wisdom so that we know from a place of love. We use our will with our understanding, so we know that this is not the ego me, but this is the Christ of my being moving in this direction. Our will manages all of this and moves us, and we train it, and we have to continue training. Have you ever seen one of those people that used to go to the gym 6 times a week and then suddenly they completely stop? Yeah, sometimes physically their bodies take on odd shapes, right? Because they have stopped training their muscles. We keep training because who we are in consciousness continues to expand. And as it continues to expand, we get to move deeper into our understanding. Yes, Amy, we get to move deeper into our love, right? So we have to keep training these. And that requires the next step, which is our obedience. See, our obedience requires our sincerity, our dedication. See, when we are willing to step into obedience of this spiritual understanding and this movement of will, we are releasing our hubris, we are moving through our victor consciousness where we think it's just me. Right? We're expanding past that, and we let go of our arrogance and our ignorance, and we let go of selfishness and ambition. We let go of the personal man, personal woman, personal being, and we embody spiritual truth. We start living from the Christ of our being because we have trained our will. And that moves us into this place of government, the next step. Government is because we allow the I am that has sent me now to direct all of our aims and goals. See, the Christ of your being wants to know itself fully as you in this amazing playground of life. And we have cleansed our willfulness. We have stood in our willingness. And when we are standing in our willingness, we agree with God. And when we agree with God, we win. We win. Not some arbitrary contest. But we get to know that we know that we know. We get to experience the truth of who we are, that that embodiment of love that we are called here to be. And from this place of government, from living from the Christ of our being, we surrender. And in surrendering, we get to model the path of our way shower. We get to model that surrender, that willingness, that not my will, but thy will be done. Not some separate will of some old man in the sky, but this embodiment of love that's coming forth that wants to know itself. We surrender to that. We surrender all the activity of all of our faculties to our highest and best good. And that brings forth the Christ, the indwelling Christ. And see, and that's where we step all the way through when we've expanded into this place of consciousness that we just talked about. You know, we've gone from being a victim, and we have expanded all the way to knowing unity, to our verity consciousness, where we know that there is no other, that even in this moment, standing behind this podium, I am having a conversation with all of these embodiments of the Christ. The I am that I am has come now to fully know itself as you and as you and as you and as me. And we get to do that by stepping in to our willingness. Stepping into our willingness. See, when we stay frozen, when we're in that willfulness place, when we stay willful, we are victims. When we're victims, we're focusing on what's wrong, what's missing, what's incomplete, and that limits our good. Yes? We don't want to limit our good, do we? And sometimes we get stuck in that victim consciousness because a trauma has happened. And we limit our good. See, in our story, Sedna sees that she has been tricked. And finally, after the winter ends, her father comes to visit and sees that she has been tricked. And so he slays the seagull and puts her in his kayak and starts to take her home. But the flock of seagulls comes and they see that their friend has been killed. And so they go to the boat and they flap their wings so hard that a great storm begins. And fearing for his life, Sedna's father throws her overboard. She's a victim again. See, we can get stuck in our idea of victimhood because we feel like we have been betrayed by the Father. Have you ever felt like you've been betrayed? We stuck there, and when we are there, we're limiting our good. We're not knowing the truth of who we are. We are not living from our willfulness. And so Sedna reaches up to grab the side of the kayak because this desire of life is so great in her. And as she reaches up to grab the side of the kayak, her father cuts her fingers off. It's a pretty gruesome creation myth, isn't it? But see, what happens is then Sedna relaxes and steps into the willingness of, I will let this be what this will be. And Sedna's fingers turn in to the seals and the walruses and the whales. And she sinks to the bottom of the sea, and her legs turn into a tail. And so in this creation myth, this is how Sedna came to be the sea of the goddess of the sea. She became the goddess of the sea. And so in this sense of betrayal, she actually was then imbued with incredible power and responsibility. Because as the goddess of the sea, it is her responsibility to let the animals free so that her people might be fed. And so when the animals don't come forth in the Inuit villages, the shamans of these villages shapeshift and become fish. And they swim to the bottom of the sea where they search out Sedna and they comb her hair to detangle it. And they massage her where she is sore and aching so that she might free the animals that their people might eat. We think sometimes that what has happened to us is bad, that it is wrong, that it is limiting. But in truth, when we stand in our will and move in the direction of our highest and best understanding, we can see and we can know that life is unfolding. That all of our good will come to us when we stand in our willingness. Our willingness. Because our willingness moves us closer into living from the Christ of our being. And I am that I am has called you now, here. Namaste. So I want to invite Dedri to sing for us and start moving us into a place of meditation.
Nearer to my heart, nearer to my soul, nearer to my life, never let me go. Oh, you are nearer to my heart, show me what to do. Oh God, to be nearer to you. Oh God, to be nearer to you. You are nearer to my heart, nearer to my soul, nearer to my life. Never let me go. Oh, you are nearer to my heart. Show me what to do. Oh God, to be nearer to you. Oh God, to be nearer to you.
So with a deep breath, just relax into this moment. Relax into this space. Knowing there's nowhere you need to be, there is nothing you need to do right now, but be here in this moment. Here in this moment. And with a deep breath, we relax. In relaxation, we know that we are receptive to spiritual ideas. We know as we relax, we are willing. We are willing. And with a deep breath, relax into this statement. Repeat it silently in your mind. I am willing to learn God's way. I am willing to learn God's way. I will to will the will of God. I will to will the will of God. I invest my resources of mind and body in a program of spiritual training. I invest my resources of mind and body in a program of spiritual training. In the light of God, I faithfully follow the best I know. In the light of God, I faithfully follow the best I know. God works in me to will and to do that which God would have me do, and God cannot fail. God works in me to will and to do that which God would have me do, and God cannot fail. Not my will, but thine will be done in all things. Not my will, but thine will be done in all things. I am the will of God in expression. I am the will of God in expression. And for just a moment in the silence, reflect on your will and your willingness. Your will and your willingness in the silence. And with a deep breath, start to bring your awareness back to this moment and to this space and this time when you're ready.